Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is the first time here. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to draft a fitted palazzo pants pattern. If you're interested in learning something like this, keep on watching. And if you're not yet subscribed to this family, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, drop your questions and suggestions in the comment section, and turn on your post notifications so that you'll be notified when I post new videos. And let's jump straight into this tutorial. You'll be needing the following measurements. 1. Your round waist circumference. 2. Your waist to hip measurement. 3. Your hip circumference. 4. Your crouch depth. To get your crouch depth, all you need to do is sit on a very flat surface. Place your tape on your waistline and measure the distance from your waistline to where your tape hits that flat surface. 5. You'll be needing your thigh circumference. 6. You need your knee length, that's the distance from your waist to your knee. And finally, you'll be needing your pants length. I'll be using this brown pattern paper to draft my pattern. So first things first, I'll come to the edge of this pattern paper and I'll roll out a straight line which will serve as my starting line and my waistline, and I'll go ahead and impute my vertical measurements. So for this particular pattern, I am going to be subtracting 1.5 inches from my waistband. So I'm placing that 1.5 inch on the starting line and I'm going to mark 11 inches, which is the distance from my waist to my hip. I'll go ahead and mark 13 inches too from that line, which is my crouch depth, and I'll go ahead and mark 23 inches, which is the distance from my waist to my knee, and I'll go ahead and mark 45 inches. This is the length of my pants. And finally, we have 47 inches. That is an extra 2-inch allowance to hem our pants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this measurement on the other side of my pattern, like you can see me doing, so that I'll have a straight line when I'm connecting. So this is me marking the distance from my waist to my hips, 13 inches for my crouch depth, 23 inches for my knee length, and finally 45 inches for my length. And I'll go ahead and rule out these lines. Now I'm going to label my lines. Now that we are done labeling, I'll come to my waistline and I'll impute 1/4 of my hip measurement, which is 40 divided by 4, 10 inches. I'll also impute 1/4 of my hip measurement on my crouch, which is 10 inches, and I'll connect these points together. Now from this line, I'm going to go in by 1 inch, okay, and I'll use my ruler to slant that towards the crouch area, hip to crouch area. This just helps me to eliminate puffiness and puckering around the groin area. Now from this our new line, I'm going to impute 1/4 of my waist measurement, which is 7. I added extra 1 inch for that allowance and I'm going to mark that. So what I'm going to do is connect that point now towards my hip using the curved part of my ruler. On my crouch line, I will impute my thigh measurement. My thigh is 25 inches. 25 divided by 2 is 12.5 inches. I'll mark that down and I'll add extra 1/2 inch for ease allowance. Go ahead and add as much ease allowance as you want and we'll create a curve towards the hip. But before I do that, this is just me marking out 1 inch to help me smoothen out my curve so that the curve is not too shallow or too wide. Okay, now I'm going to measure what I have on my crouch line, everything, which is 13 inches, and I'll divide that by 2, which is about 6.5 inches. And I'm going to start marking this 6.5 inches on my knee line. This is just to get the midpoint for other measurements that we are going to be adding later on. I'm also going to mark that 6.5 inches on my ankle point, and I'll mark it on my allowance area. Okay, for a typical palazzo pant, you can decide to mark what you have on your crotch, which is 13 inches in my case, all the way down, but we won't be doing that here because this is a fitted palazzo pant. We want it to be tapered down. So for my knee area, I'm going to be using 24 inches. 24 divided by 2 is 12 inches. So this is me marking 6 inches on one side of this point that we made earlier and the remaining 6 inches on the other side of this point. This is the reason why we made this point earlier, to serve as a mid point for us. On my ankle, I'm going to be marking 20 inches, okay? 20 divided by 2 is 10, so I'm marking 5 inches on one side of this point and 5 inches on the other side of this point. I'll go ahead and mark the same thing on my allowance. You can decide to use the same 24 inches that you used on your knee for your ankle, but I want this to be really tapered. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect these points together, and I'm going to stop connecting at the ankle. For the allowance area, we are going to fold it in when we are cutting, so that we will not have shortages when we are trying to hem these pants. Just watch carefully and you understand what I am trying to explain. After connecting, I'll come to my waistline and we'll figure out the dart. So I'm going to measure what I have here on the waist and divide it by 2. You can decide to use your bust bar measurement divided by 2. Okay, for the length of this dart, I'm going to come up 2 inches above my hip line. I don't know guys, I love long darts. Okay, go ahead and use whatever length you want. I'm going to draw a straight line to meet that point, and I'm going to mark half an inch on both sides of this line to form my dart, and I'll connect this together. Now on this my waistline, I'm going to come down by 3/4 of an inch. You can come down by 1 inch or half an inch, and because I came down by this 3/4 inch, I'm going to replace it at the side. I'm going to go up by 3/4 inch at the side. Okay, so I'll mark this down, and next I'm going to connect this point to meet the dart leg in such a way that it meets each dart leg. So this is me closing in my dart, and I'll use my curved ruler to connect these points to meet my dart legs. Okay, this step is totally optional. You don't have to do this step. If you don't want to slant your waist, please do not slant your waist. It is not optional. Okay, you can still sew it without slanting and it will come out nice. So after connecting, guys, this is what it looks like. Basically, each of them stops at the dart leg, and you can see that we do not have any shortages. If you don't do it like this, you're going to have shortages. And next, we are going to grab our scissors and we are going to cut around these lines. We'll fold in the allowance when we are cutting, so that we will not have shortage of fabric when we are trying to hem this pant. Just watch carefully and you understand what I'm trying to explain. So guys, this is what I mean. I'm going to fold in my allowance like this, and I'll continue cutting. So after cutting, I'll open it up, and you can see that the allowance area is a little bit slanted out. This will help us hem our pants properly without any annoying shortages. For the waist area, I need you to watch carefully. I'm going to start cutting from the original waistline up until that 3/4 inches that I raised at the side. The other slant, I'm going to be cutting it after drafting out the back pattern. Again, ignore this part if you are not going to be slanting your waistline. So after cutting, our front pattern is ready. I am going to place this onto a fresh pattern paper like you have seen. I have used my pin to secure it in place, and I'm going to be using this my front pattern to trace out my back pattern. So the next thing I'm going to do is extend this crouch line. I'm going to come down by 1/4 of an inch, that's 0.25 inches, and I'll extend this line out. On my waistline, I'm going to extend my waistline, but I won't be coming down by anything. Now on this waistline, I'm going to mark 2 inches. On this 2 inches point, okay, I'm going to go up by 1 inch. You can decide to go up by 1.5 inch or 2 inches. The essence of raising that part up is so that it can accommodate our butt, but I'm going to be using 1 inch. So if you have a bigger butt, you can use 1.5 inch or 2 inches. So I'm going to connect these points now to meet my waistline. Next, I'm going to go to my crouch line and I'm going to mark 2.5 inches. You can decide to mark 3 inches and we'll connect these points to meet our waistline there. But I'm just going to come here and mark out 2 inches so that it serves as a guide, and this is me trying to connect this to that 2.5 inches point using a straight ruler and also a curve. Okay, so for this remaining parts, we are just going to be adding 2 inches seam allowance. Okay, I know you may be confused as to why we are adding 2 inch seam allowance and we did not add any allowance to the front. I'm going to be explaining this in a moment. So after marking out these points, we are going to be connecting these points using our straight ruler. So after connecting, guys, the next thing to do is cut out this pattern. But before we cut out this pattern, I'm just going to place a mark on all my lines: my knee line, my crouch line, my hip line, my length line, so that by the time I take out this front pattern, I can easily rule out my straight lines and label them if need be. So guys, let me use this opportunity to explain why the back pattern is bigger than the front pattern. This is because if you notice, while I was drafting the front pattern, I did not add any seam allowance. I am using a method where all the seam allowance required to sew this pant and move to the back pattern. So this is why the back pattern is bigger than the front pattern by 2 inches. Normally we are supposed to have like 1/2 an inch on both sides of the front to join this to the back pattern, but because of this technique we moved that 1 inch to the back, and this is why the back pattern is bigger than the front pattern by 2 inches. I hope my explanation makes sense to you. If you do not understand it, drop your questions in the comments box. However, there are other methods that you can use where you don't have to move all the seam allowance to the back, but for this particular method that I'm using, it has been working for me. All I need to do is add extra 2 inches at the back pattern, and this will serve as my seam allowance to sew it. It always works for me. If you follow this method, it is definitely going to work out for you. So after cutting, guys, our back pattern is ready. Remember, we did not cut out the slants at the waistline for the front, so I'm just going to take out my pin and I'll take my scissors and cut out that slants. So I'm going to put the front pattern aside and I'll bring my ruler and I'll connect these lines and probably label it if I like. So guys, I have gone ahead to draw in my green line and write down my annotations off camera. Okay, and at this point I realized that I forgot to impute my dart for the back pattern. Guys, this is my back pattern. Oh please, I don't know what was wrong with me. That's my back pattern. So in order to do this, you can do what I did. I just used the front pattern to kind of trace out my back pattern onto the dart rather onto the back pattern. But I feel like the best way to do this is actually to divide your back waistline by 2 and mark that down. And for the length of my dart, I went up 3 inches above my hip line. You can use whatever length you want and connect this together and you have your dart. So this is it right here, guys. Our palazzo pant, our straight fitted palazzo pant pattern is ready. As you can see, it is pretty easy and straightforward for anybody to understand. And maybe in my next video I am going to be testing this pattern out. We are going to cut our waistbands and we sew this. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and leave a like for me. Subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. Share this video with your friends. Drop your questions and suggestions in the comment box and turn on your post notification bell so that you'll be updated when I post new videos, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.